everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. We're still working on our little red D100 pickup. Let's see what we got to do today. Here we got us a whole bunch of front end parts. So today we're going to do some work on the front end. I noticed when I was under there, all the bushings are all dry rotted and spewing out. And I don't know, ball joints, anything like that. It all seems okay, but you know what? It makes some funny noises, and it sometimes doesn't drive the best. So we're going to go through it all, give it an alignment, and see how that works out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it kind of a dry run first. I'm going to do this side first, off camera, to make sure it all goes well and make sure I've got all the parts I need. And then I'll film when I do the other side. So we've got it sitting on the turn plates because I'm going to take some, just some preliminary readings and try to set it back to that when I put it back together. We'll mark which way the cams are pointing on the control arms, and that'll get us pretty close when we put it back together. So what we've done, when it's sitting on the turn plates, normally on an alignment hoist, those would be sunk in so they're flush with the ramp, but you can see here they're sitting on the garage floor. So all we do is we jack up the back of it. These are about 1 3/4 thick, so I sit it on top of a piece of 2x8. That's as close as damn it is to swearing for what we're about to do right now, and then we'll fine tune it later when I'm going to do the actual kind of alignment. But for now, this will get us close. Okay, so we got that all sorted out. I've marked down what this thing is set at currently, and we'll, like I said, we'll try to get it close to that as a starting point when we put it back together, and then we'll set it up for keeps. I'll get into how we use these tools at that point. But this stuff is pretty easy. It's stuff that you can get your hands on, and you literally never have to pay for an alignment again. So that's what we came up with. And I'm going to get the, look at my manual and get the 1976 specs for what they say it is. And then for a joke, I'm going to get the 1980, the chassis is 84 to 87. I'm going to get that book out and see what they say the specs should be. And then I'm going to go with a 1992 book and see what they say the front end specs should be, because I bet they'll all be different, as over the years they put different, this originally would have been probably set for bias belted, small, tall, skinny tires. This may be some tall, skinny radials. And this one probably would be for a 235, 75, 15 radial. Very similar to what's on here. And, you know, they would be going for a more modern feel. That's probably the setting we'll go with, because the front end parts are all the same from 1972 up, you know, so it just depends what you set it to. So just on a lark, we're going to check those. I checked, and it turns out I don't have a mid-80s manual, but I do have a 1993 manual, which is the last year for this chassis. And you know what? The exact same specs as 1976. So there you have it. It didn't change over the years, but it did say if the vehicle wanders, increase caster. And you can see here how this one's at 2 and 3, although they said they want it to be the same on both sides. So we'll worry about that when we get to it, but that's an explanation of that. So we're going to get started taking this thing apart. You can see here stuff like this. That's shock bushing. It's all wasted. The control arm bushing, wasted. Everything that's rubber, it's 1984. What does that make it? 40 years old. It's done its course, you know. So we're going to start taking this all apart. First thing we're going to get out is the sway bar and the strut rods. And then we'll start on all of this stuff. Her dad put, when he did it, all new brake lines, hoses, new calipers, all that stuff. We're going to cut these rotors, make sure they're above minimum, and put a new set of pads on it while we're here. And we'll go from there. So I'll see you when I get these things off. That's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to worry about filming that too much. And then we'll get at this stuff. With that stuff out of the way, next thing we're going to take off is the brakes. So rather than have the calipers hanging around in here while we're doing all this work, because everything is new and it'll all come apart easy, for the 5 minutes it takes, we're just going to undo the hard line there and just take the caliper and the flex hose off in one shot. We'll cap off that so we don't lose all our brake fluid, and it is just out of the way. Once all the brakes are off, next thing we're going to knock off is the steering linkage. So we've got the center link is a wear part on these. Not Chrysler cars, the center link is usually not a wear part, but on these trucks it's a wear part, and it's already been changed. It's almost brand new, this one. So we're going to take the linkage off in one piece, and we'll deal with it on the bench later. So first thing I got to do is go and take all these cotter pins out. And then I'm going to try and use my little puller tool to push these out rather than beat the hell out of them with a hammer. We're going to use our tie rod breaker to pop these apart. So how you use this thing, it often gets used wrong. And you don't really use this to pull the, oh, that one popped right out. If it doesn't want to come, what you could do is use this to just put a little load on it and then smack the side of that, one sharp rap on the side of the eye, and it'll pop right out. But this one came out really easy. So there's our steering linkage off. Next thing we're going to do is remove the cotter pins from the ball joint nuts and just crack them and wind them up a turn or two just to make sure they're free. But we're not going to take them off right yet. Once we've got these two nuts cracked down there, we know they're free now. Now we got to get the upper ball joint on these things are screwed in. And there's a special socket. It's kind of a square. There's two sizes, large and small. This, surprisingly enough, uses the large one. So we got that on there, and we started blasting it with our big NitroCat gun. And you can see we've got it come out maybe a turn or so. So that's good. It's on its way out. We could go ahead now and knock these off. We're not going to do that yet. I got to get everything loosened up on the other side. Now that we've got all that done, we can get these ball joints busted free. Let's see if we can get this top one. There, it went. The bottom one will probably be a little more difficult because it's bigger. And I don't want to smash my knuckle on that steering arm. I don't know if we can get at it from the back side more easily. Oh yeah, maybe. Problem is, I don't think there's a lot of tension on it from the spring. Okay, what we're going to do is go ahead and use the pickle fork. We're not using the ball joint again, so we really don't care. We'll just use the pickle fork and split it. Now we're going to use the jack under here. You don't really have to jack it up. Just let it sit under there so when these come off, the lower control arm doesn't escape on you. The shock should hold it, but you never know. And then we're going to use the impact gun to spin these two nuts off. Then we'll be able to get the spindle out of there. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to undo the shock. Sometimes you have to cut these or you can break them off. But the one on the other side came right off. So we're just going to clamp a pair of vice grips on the shaft there and spin it off with a ratchet. And then we'll see if the bottom bolts want to come out. On the other side, I had to put some heat on them because you don't want to break the bolts off. There's little captive nuts in the control arm. And you want to avoid breaking those if at all possible. Yeah, so I had to heat those up, but we got them out. Nothing broke. We'll should be able to get the shock down now. Oh, it should fall down. I don't have a pry bar over here to reach through it. It's just hanging up in the bushing a little bit. There we go. Shock is out. So now we can lower this jack. I don't know if the spring will come out now. No, the spring won't come out. So what we got to do now is we got to take that big pivot bolt out, the lower control arm pivot bolt, and we'll probably have to drive it out with the air hammer, but it'll come out, and then that'll free the control arm and the spring. And then all we'll have left is this baby up here. And that's usually the funnest part. That's why we save it till last. Well, would you look at that? The bolt just came right out. So we'll jiggle that guy down. There. It's still a little warm. Now I can get this jack out of the way here. And we're going to get this guy out. First thing we got to do is spin this guy the rest of the way out. Watch your ears. There we go. Ta-da! Now, the moment of truth. We got to see if we can get these nuts off. First thing we have to do is grab a piece of chalk. So what we're going to do now, before we take these cams out, they've all got a hole drilled in them. You can see there, and that's at the high spot of the cam. So what we're going to do is just mark. That one's at 6 o'clock. So we're just going to write 6 o'clock on the frame rail. And then this guy here, he's at 7 o'clock. So we're going to write that. That way, when we put it back together, we've got it reasonably close to start. Now we're going to see if we can get these nuts off. This is the worst part, getting these cam bolts out. There was a lot of air chiseling getting the ones out on the other side. I purposely did that side first because it's usually the worst side, because it's the curb side and it gets all the salt and splash and everything. This side, it's away from the curb, and on top of it, these old Saginaw steering boxes usually leak like hell, and it keeps this stuff a little more wet with oil than the other side. So we'll see if we can get these off. If we can get them off, we stand half a chance of being able to push them out. Lucky they've got these tails on them, which helps a lot with getting on them with the air chisel. All right, a little heat and the nuts did come off. Now we're going to get the old air chisel saddled up and see if we can start pushing them out. This guy here, the back one, you got to get him out a little bit, and then you have to turn it so that the cam is pointing up, because there's a lump. You can see it. Can you see it? Right there at the end of my finger, there's a lump in the frame that the cam will hit if it's down. I learned that on the other side. It doesn't seem to be such a big deal at the front. Well, this one back here, in the end, no way, Jose. I had to light the torch and cut the sucker out with the torch. I was going at it with the Sawzall, but I think the inner sleeve was hardened maybe, and it was just really tough sledding with the saw. So in the end, it's out. So we got a big mess to clean up now. And something I'm going to have to figure out is when you're doing the alignment on these things, the cam bolts go from the inside out and the nuts are on the outer end. It's very difficult to access them in here to turn it. So that's why they provide you with this little 3/8 hex on the end of them, so you can turn the cams when they're in there. Of course, our new cam bolts are like that. They don't have the little hex on the end. So we're going to have to do some backyard engineering and see what we could come up with. I've at least got 2 of these proper ones. If I could find 2 more, maybe we would just go back with nice factory ones. We'll figure it out. Now we're going to strip the control arms down. As ugly as these bushings are, they're pretty easy to get out. Interesting to note, these are the original bushings. You can tell because it's still got the extra sleeve on the rear one. You can see here on the rear control arm bushings only. After they push the bushing in, they put this sleeve over it, just to lock it in place. I think it's got to do with braking, right? When you slam on the brakes, the control arms want to stop, but the truck wants to keep going. So it creates a force like that. So these things help to just augment the press fit of those bushings a bit. That's my theory anyway. So all we do is put a bolt through there. We've got this nicely sized piece of 2 1/4 exhaust pipe that fits in there perfectly. And then a bar to spread the load. And somewhere there's a washer. Oh, here we are. A washer and a nut. And we just go to town with the impact gun and it whoop, just pulls it right out. There we are. Control arms are stripped out. The rear bushing in this one was a little interesting because remember we had to cut it because the bolt was seized in there, but just a little fiddle around in a couple of different tubes and stuff, and we got it out, and we managed to save the reinforcing sleeve, so it's all good. Now we're going to strip down the lower control arms. First we'll do the ball joints. Yeah, okay, we can use the ball joint press. So you can see here we've got our ball joint press all set up to pull this thing out. I'm going to need 2 hands. I'll be back. Now we can pull out the lower control arm bushing, and it is oriented. It goes in from the front of the control arm. Same way we did the upper control arms. We just used like a different arrangement of bolts and stuff. It's pretty much all the same stuff. We just used a longer bolt, and we need a little larger washer out there because the outer shell of this bushing is a little bit larger. And then once we get it that far, we run out of threads on the bolt, but it's all right. You can see there it's loose in there. So we just put the socket back on like that and a few taps with a hammer and it comes right out. These were just starting to go, but they weren't really as bad as the upper ones. The lower ones in these generally do a lot better. But we're in there anyway, so we're going to change them. Oh, there we go. Both sides are all taken apart. All the bushing stripped out, ball joints. There's the casualties so far. The only things I found that were like really bad was one front shock was completely dead. It didn't do nothing. You could grab the shaft and just pull it in and out. The other one was working, but it was not a gas shock. So we've got a nice pair of gas shocks to go on the front of it. It's got a nice pair of gas shocks on the back. And aside from that, the ball joints were kind of, not loose, but not shot. Everything was original, It had a center link and I think one tie rod end put on it somewhere along the line and a pair of shocks. Aside from that, the entire front end was original, 1984, I think. So it didn't owe anybody anything, but it sure was fun to get it apart. So what I'll do now is in the next day or so, I'm going to get all this stuff cleaned up. I got to get the rotors cut and make sure they're above minimum. That'll be job one. And we'll get all this other stuff cleaned up and painted and pretty and nice, get all the hardware fixed up. And then when I come back for the next video, we'll put it all together. That should be fun, eh? Ugh, I'm covered in stuff. Anyway, that was a long, loud, and dirty day. At least I didn't air chisel my knee again like I did yesterday. That's a whole nother story. And you know what? That was a really interesting job on my brother's car. He had an ABS fault code, and through not really skill, but kind of the process of elimination and stuff, we were able to figure it out without having to fire the parts cannon at it. We found what was wrong and fixed it, and it's good now. I'm happy about that. Not so happy about air chiseling my knee. Oh well, hey, them's the breaks. What are you going to do? Anyway, I'm going to take off now. I'd like to thank you for tuning into our little channel. Hope you enjoy some of the stuff we do. And I hope you'll come back and see us again. And until then, I'm Kevin saying so long for now from the Claremont Classic Garage.